Hey, what's going on guys, Alex here from Simple Mods and welcome back to another video. Now it's time for another motherboard video on the channel, and that is for the new ASUS TUF X299 Mark 1. Let's check it out. Alright guys, so what I've done is I've pulled everything out of the box, and these are all of the accessories that are included with the X299 TUF motherboard. So I'll just quickly go over everything. Now you will get two vinyls. So there's a white one, just has the TUF branding, just says TUF inside, and then there's a grey one and it says stay cool, be tough. So that's pretty cool if you want to add that to your case. You will get your driver's disc, but I do recommend that you download the latest drivers from the ASUS website. You will get the standard Sata cables that are now included pretty much with most motherboards. You will get 4 of them here. There's 2 of them that have a straight end and a 90 end on the other end, and then 2 that have straight end on both sides. You'll get your front panel connector. So with this you can use this outside of the case, plug in all your front panel connectors, and then easily just plug this in, just having one thing to pretty much plug in once everything is inside the case. So that's a handy thing to have. It's a M.2 mounting screw. Cool thing that they include here is a graphics card holder. So it's a TUF branded graphics card holder, so you can use these mounting holes here to mount this to the Pcie brackets on your case. And then it does have these little rubber feet here that you can sort of prop this up underneath your graphics card, and it'll keep it from sagging. And these little feet here do look like you can actually pop them off or sort of move them slightly up and down in these grooves here, or you can move them in on any of these other mountings, just depending on the type of graphics card that you have. So that's definitely a cool addition. You will have your TUF X299 user guide, so you'll be able to find all of the information about the motherboard in here. And another thing that's included with TUF branded motherboards is a certificate of reliability. So these motherboards go through a lot of vigorous tests. They get put through bunch of military standard tests. So they do test the capacitors, the chokes, the MOSFETs and everything. So they put them through thermal shock tests, moisture resistance tests, salt spray tests, and a bunch of other tests. So this is just a checklist sort of thing to ensure that it has gone through all of the rigorous tests that the TUF series motherboards are known for. Similar to other ASUS motherboards that have come out since the beginning of this year, they do include a 20% off CableMod cables. So that's a special deal that ASUS has together with CableMod to offer 20% off of their cables with any purchase of ASUS motherboards. And a cool fact, I've highlighted this before. If you have seen any of my other motherboard videos, I'm actually very proud of being the person to have shot this photo here and the one on the back as well. So that was a special project I worked on with CableMod. And as I've done before, here is the code. So whoever's the first person that grabs it will get yourself 20% off of CableMod cables. So enjoy. You will get your rear I/O shield. Again, TUF branded. It's just a standard black shield, but it looks really nice. This is a vertical M.2 mount. You will get a really nice TUF USB. I'm not sure if there's anything on it. I haven't plugged this in, but it's definitely a nice touch. Then, as included with all of the TUF motherboards in the past, you do get some PCIe covers. So in the past, they used to include a lot more covers. However, with this one, it just looks like you do get some PCIe covers. So there's 5 in total, 4 of them for 16X slots, and then another 4X slots. So you get 2 black ones, and then these 3 here are silver. And then you get 2 SLI bridges. So there's a 2-way and a 3-way, and these are perfect for the spacing on the motherboard. And just the one thing I don't understand is why they included ROG branded SLI bridges rather than TUF branded SLI bridges. So I guess that's the only thing I don't understand. So if you are looking at this motherboard, if you're hoping of getting some TUF branded bridges as well, similar to how everything on the motherboard is TUF branded, then unfortunately they do include ROG bridges for some reason. So I'm a case modder, this is no issue for me. I would have probably just covered this off, put some custom file on, and I can brand it whatever way I want. But if you're looking at this motherboard, looking at SLIing, and it's something that bothers you, I know this might actually bother some people, it just depends on how your OCD is. But yeah, that's one thing to know. Still nice to include some HP bridges out of the box, so that's good. So that's pretty much it. Let's move on to the really good stuff. Here's the motherboard. Alright guys, so here's the ASUS TUF X299 Mark 1 motherboard in all its glory. The motherboard is priced at $549 in Australia and $339 in the US. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a CPU present in order to test the motherboard, so this video will be an overview of all the features that this motherboard offers. Now, you can really tell that ASUS have been trying to really push this neutral color scheme across all of their latest motherboards and utilize an integrated RGB feature in order to add color to your build that way. So it's really nice to see a TUF motherboard in a neutral color, as before they would always seem to go for a more sort of military look, featuring some brown and cream colors on some of the connectors. So I really like the look of this one, given that it's all sort of in a neutral sort of gray and black color. However, similar to other TUF motherboards in the past, it has these very small orange highlights. So there's one in the top left corner over the IO cover and another one in the middle just over the Ultimate Force branding, which is also the only point on this motherboard that also lights up in full RGB. So you might love or hate these orange highlights, but unfortunately they're there. And for me personally, I would have preferred if ASUS have stuck to a full neutral color and not include these orange highlights. So this version of the motherboard is the Mark 1, and what that means is that it does feature the TUF armor, and it is in a dual color scheme shifting from black to gray, and it features a nice wet look on the black areas. So it's a similar finish that is found on the GPU holder that I showed you guys before when I was unboxing it. So there is also a Mark 2 version, which in terms of features is very similar to the Mark 1. However, it is a bit cheaper at $419 in Australia and about $259 in the US. However, the Mark II does not feature the TUF armor. So the ASUS TUF X299 is of course on the latest Intel X299 chipset and features the latest LGA 2066 socket supporting the latest Kaby Lake X and Skylake X processors, ranging from the 4-core i5s to the current top-of-the-line Intel CPU, the 10-core 20-thread i9-7900X, and will also further support Intel's new 12-core, 14-core, 16-core, and 18-core CPUs once they are released later this year. Now, getting into some of the more technical side of things for this motherboard, there are a few things that you should be aware of depending on the CPU that you decide to use. Now, given that Skylake X CPUs only feature 16 PCIe lanes and only support dual channel memory, there are certain features of this motherboard that will be disabled with Kaby Lake CPUs. So there are 3 16x length PCIe slots present, with the top 2 being wired for 16x, and also features the ASUS safe slot reinforcing, with the bottom one being wired for 8x. So you can see the top 2 here. This one will be wired at 16, along with this one will be wired at 16 as well, and they both feature the ASUS safe slot reinforcing, which is just the metal sort of reinforcement around it, which will sort of have your GPU stay in more securely. And then you will find the bottom 16x length slot that is only wired for 8x. This one does not feature the safe slot armor on it. These 16x length PCIe slots will run as follows. So with a 44 lane CPU, and the only one so far being the i9-7900X, they will run at 16x, 16x, and then 8x. With a 28 lane CPU such as the 6-core and 8-core Skylake X CPUs, they will run at 16 and then 8x for the second one. And with a 16 lane CPU such as the 4-core Kaby Lake X CPUs, they will run at 8x and then 8x for the top 2 slots. And also, so with a 28 lane and a 16 lane CPU, the bottom 16x length PCIe slot, which is the one here, will share the bandwidth with the first 4x slot, which is the one just here. And with a 16 lane CPU only, such as the Kaby Lake X CPUs, the bottom 4x slot will share bandwidth with SATA ports numbered 5 through to 8, which should be the very last bottom SATA ports here. And that is the 4x slot here that will share bandwidth with those SATA ports only under a 16 lane CPU such as the Kaby Lake X models. Now, when it comes to memory, you will again find limitations if you're using a Kaby Lake X CPU running in dual channel only, meaning that you can only utilize the 4 RAM slots on the right hand side of the CPU socket. So that will be these ones here, those being channels C and D, with a maximum supported RAM capacity of 64 gigs. So that's similar to that found on Z170 and Z270 chipset motherboards in the past. Now, with Skylake X CPU supporting quad channel memory, you will be able to utilize all of the 8 RAM slots to a maximum capacity of 128 gigabytes. And with any CPU, the maximum supported RAM frequency will be 4133 megahertz. So that may be a lot to take in, and I've tried to explain it as best as I could. However, you may need to do some further research if you are thinking of investing into a X299 system and you're not sure what CPU to get. So you'll find the same sort of issues with compatibility with the PCIe lanes and the RAM, no matter what motherboard you choose for X299. So the main thing to keep in mind is to do your research on the CPU that you want to purchase. Now, when it comes to M.2 support, the motherboard features 2 slots, one underneath this area just here, which can be accessed by undoing the 2 screws, and it will be actively cooled by the fan above it, pushing the air towards the bottom. And also, as you can see, when you take off the cover, it does have a thermal pad underneath as well, which will go on top of the M.2 SSD to give it more better active cooling from the cover itself. And then you can also easily access the battery from here as well if you ever do need to take that out, as I don't seem to find a clear CMOS button on this motherboard. Now the second M.2 slot is towards the bottom of the motherboard, and you will need to use the included vertical M.2 mount in order to connect a drive here. A thing to note with both M.2 ports, they do support PCIe 4X drives. However, if you want to run a SATA M.2 drive, you can only do so with the first slot underneath the cover. The slot at the very bottom of the motherboard, the second M.2 slot, that one will only support PCIe SSD, so you will not be able to run SATA M.2 SSDs with that slot. So now that we got all of the main technical bits out of the way, let's check out some of the features and connectors of this motherboard to see if this is the right board for you. So starting from the top left hand corner, we'll work our way down. So you will find 4 fan headers here, so they're all 4-pin PWM controlled fan headers. Then you will find a 4-pin and an 8-pin EATX power. So for the CPU, you will have some activity status lights, since this motherboard does not feature a Q code directly on it. So you will find all sort of different lights around the CPU, memory, booting, and all that sort of stuff around there. You will have a Memo OK button just here, and then further down to that, you will have the 24-pin connector. You will have 2 more 4-pin fan headers there. Then the USB 3.1 Gen 2 front panel connector. Below that, there's another 4-pin fan header. You will have the front panel USB 3.0 connector. You will have your 8 SATA 3 6 gigabits per second ports, and then just underneath that you will have a pump header. So this one will support water cooling pumps such as a DDC pump or a D5 pump or something like that, and you can control that via PWM, and you can also directly power a pump from that header there, supporting up to a maximum of 36 watts just from that single connector there. And just further down from that, moving along the bottom, you will find your front panel connectors. It is that second M.2 slot that I mentioned before, then another USB 3.0 front panel connector, the USB 2.0 front panel connector. You will find further 2 fan slots, with the one here being a high amp fan slot, meaning that it does support 3 amps, again 36 watts, similar to the other fan for the pump header. And then just above from that, you will have the Intel VROC hardware key connector, then the integrated Aura RGB lighting port for a 50/50 LED strip supporting the ASUS Aura Sync feature. You will have an internal Thunderbolt header, a power switch button, so you can turn off your system on and off easily just with that button on the motherboard. And then finally, the front panel audio headers. Around the rear I/O, you will find a BIOS flashback button just here, 4 USB 2.0 ports, and further to that, there is a special USB port, which in conjunction with the included USB stick that I showed you guys before when I was unboxing the motherboard, I wasn't quite sure what that included TUF branded USB stick was for. However, using that, you can monitor a whole bunch of different stats from the motherboard using the app on Android and iOS devices, which will even give you a Q code readout within the app, so you can easily troubleshoot any hardware issues that you might have. So that's definitely a really cool feature that the TUF motherboard has. Now moving along from that, you will find 2 USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports, a Type A and a Type C port. You will find 4 USB 3.0 ports, and this motherboard doesn't feature Wi-Fi unfortunately. However, it does feature 2 gigabit LAN ports. And then finally, you will have all of your rear I/O audio connectors. Now that was a whole lot of connectors, so let's recap on some of them, as I do want to highlight some of the features of this motherboard. So you will find 3 USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, so the 2 on the back, the Type A and the Type C port, and then 1 via the internal connector for the front panel. You will also find 8 USB 3.0 ports, so there are 4 on the back, and then 4 via the 2 internal connectors on the motherboard. And then further from that, you will have 6 USB 2.0 ports, the 4 on the back, and then 2 via the internal header. Also, I want to round up all of the 4-pin fan headers on the motherboard, as there are 10 of them in total, so that's definitely a lot of fan headers included. So there are the 2 CPU fan headers, the CPU main and the CPU optional, which share the same controller. You will find 6 chassis fan headers, and then these 8 fans headers in total will support 1 amps each, or a maximum of 12 watts of power from each header. And then you will have that 1 water cooling pump header that I highlighted before, and the high amperage header that I highlighted as well. So these 2 ports will support a maximum of 3 amps each, or a maximum of 36 watts of power. So all of the 10 ports can be controlled via PWM from the BIOS, or using the included ASUS software, so that's definitely another nice addition. So that's pretty much it on the ASUS TUF X299 motherboard. I know it was a very long video, but I hope you guys managed to learn as much as you needed about this motherboard, and thanks a lot for sticking around all the way to the end. Now, if you have any questions, then make sure to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content, as it does help out a lot, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.